We're looking at how we build an African network of certified accessibility professionals. And during this session, presenters are going to provide an overview of the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. So Christopher Lee and Colette.
Good afternoon, everybody. They've given us the graveyard shift here, so I'm going to... You guys are really committed if you're still in this venue at 5 p.m. today. My name is Colette Francelette. I'm going to start off. For the people who are non-visual, so I'm Caucasian, so white woman. I've got medium length curly hair. I'd like to think it's quite curly. Dark features. I'm wearing black trousers and a flowery top today. And Christopher, do you maybe want to just give a description of yourself?
Yeah, my name is Christopher Lee. I'm a white male with brownish gray hair. I'm in my 50s, and I'm wearing a suit.
So before Christopher takes the stage, I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to tell you why I think certification for accessibility is important on our continent. So I've been working as a specialist universal access consultant for over 15 years. I'm from South Africa, and I've traveled to numerous African countries, mainly in sub-Saharan Africa, to teach on the concept of universal design and accessibility. So I just wanted to share with you why I think accessibility is important. So this is not an academic presentation. There's been presentations on statistics and the disability economy, and so I just wanted to take you through some of the thoughts I had on why we would like to initiate this program. So on this continent, we really are all about family. I don't think there's anywhere else in the world where you can find a better sense of family and community than on this continent. So everything we do is about creating a better future for our children and to ensure that our elders not only have a space at the table, but that they can participate and share their knowledge and experience. If you think about the concept of accessibility and what that means for lifespan design, it means that everyone has experienced a requirement for accessibility at some point in their lives. So whether it's a mother who's pregnant, or families with small children, or maybe people experiencing a temporary functional limitation, all the way through to, if we're lucky enough to be the elders ourselves. And so if we are not designing to include and implement accessibility, we're failing not only our families, but our future selves. Secondly, Africa really is the birthplace for creativity. That's been mentioned throughout the last 2 days as well. And so this creativity, in combination with the sheer perseverance it takes to live on our continent, it really means that our people are inherently inclined and driven towards barriers, solving barriers, overcoming obstacles, and problem solving. We're a hard-working continent, but if we don't include accessibility in the work that we do, from the beginning, we give ourselves more work in the future. There is a shift on our continent towards more accessibility and a drive to uphold the rights of people with disabilities as equal citizens, and that was also mentioned yesterday already. So the only way we're going to build an African countries that are accessible is by encouraging as many of our people as possible to gain the knowledge and skills in accessibility, both in the digital space and within the built environment. So there will always be a space for accessibility professionals and experts, but we need to share the skills of accessibility so that it can be applied everywhere. This will result in the faster deployment of accessibility throughout our continent and will increase the value and input from experts in the field of accessibility, which was echoed yesterday by Serena Davis, who said that funders are looking for local specialists. Africa needs to gain the expertise to serve itself first, and so that when international organizations call for experts to work on the continent, we can all stand in line to bid on the projects. We need to take over the lion's share of the accessibility work that is being done here. And I'm very aware that in Africa we all dance to the beat of our own drums, but I think there is a big benefit to joining a system, and an existing organization that offers the support that is required for us to meet the accessibility needs of our families and to overcome the barriers in both the digital and the physical space. So they also offer a great extent for an option for continental networking and achieving international certification with our local and relevant experience. So talking about pumpkins doesn't make them grow, which is why I have, along with Christopher and Irene, we're here to help nurture the seeds of accessibility in this space and on the African continent. But I also know that we all know that if we want to go fast, we go alone. But if we want to go far, we need to go together. And so my call to you and everyone you know is to do more than just talk about accessibility. Bernard Chira yesterday also said, conversation has to be followed by concrete action. And so what I'd like us to do is to take action to make Africa an accessible place, but to do it together as one force, as one team, and as one continent. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Christopher.
Yeah, thank you, Colette. I really appreciate those words and starting us off. As I mentioned earlier, this is the goal of this presentation is to be more of a discussion, to talk about how do we proceed to have a chapter, an IAAP chapter in Africa. And this has been something that Irene and I have talked about for years. And Irene, do you want to just say a few words about what your thoughts about that before I jump into what the chapters are?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you? Yeah, excellent. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I do think it's important to have an accessibility chapter here in Africa and even in multiple countries. And part of it is so that we can have continuous education. A lot of times I've gone online or someone sends me some invitation to join some accessibility training for 2 days and you'll become an accessibility developer. When you see anything like that, you need to stay away because accessibility is not a quick fix. It's a process. But also, if you get the training, it's important if you spend money, you spend it in the right type of training. So I do feel it's important to have a chapter so that we are able to provide the right guidelines, especially if you're going to enroll for some type of training. Is it really a legitimate organization that has the knowledge to give you that kind of training and certification? But at the same time, accessibility is a continuous process. There's always something new. Technology changes all the time. So there's continuous information coming in. And also, if you're in a chapter, you'll be in a community of other people. Even if they live in Ghana, they live in Nigeria, they live in Kenya, and you'll be able to share information about accessibility. So I do feel that it's important to bring people together, and especially on the certification side, so that if you get a certification, it's important to get an international certification. So those are my...
That's great. Yeah, thank you, Irene. And we also, just to point out somebody else in the audience right now, we have Klaus Heckner with the DOC chapter, who's one of our German chapters in Austria and Switzerland chapter. And the chapter in Germany and the DOC chapter has been around, I think, 2 years now, going on the 3rd year. And so to give you, I want to lay a foundation of IAAP. We talked a little bit about it earlier in the early session, but if you weren't in that session, I want to give you just kind of a high-level overview of IAAP, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of talking about, is a chapter right for Africa? And what are some of the challenges that we might face in Africa? And this would be something that we want to engage the audience with. What are some of the hurdles that we've faced with other chapters? We'll be talking a little bit about that. Because if we move forward with this, we want to do it right. And we have a lot of knowledge now from all 7 chapters that we've got around the globe. We know what has worked and what hasn't worked. But what we have learned more than anything is that just because you have a chapter in Germany, in the DOC chapter region, and a chapter in India, they're not going to operate the same. And they're going to be very different. So laying that foundation and understanding the challenges and where the success points are is going to be crucial in this mix. And the only people that can help us do that is y'all. So it's important that we have this engagement and we start this discussion. So I'm going to jump to the PowerPoint deck and just go through kind of a high level relatively quickly. I promise I won't talk too fast for the sign language interpreter of IAAP. So today, we're going to be talking about this network because what we're looking at for the chapter is a network. So we want to see tentacles throughout Africa where we are spreading the accessibility profession. And I mentioned in the earlier session is that IAAP came out of a grassroots entities that came together mostly in the US to talk about the need for an association. It also was joined with private industry, a lot of tech companies like IBM, Microsoft, a lot of financial industries like Wells Fargo came together. And then we had the government and the universities. All sat around, they had focus groups, they did research, and they said, you know what, we need to make sure that there's a baseline, as Irene said, some sort of certifications out there that says, hey, we know if we're going to hire you, that you have some level of expertise. So that's where the certifications come in. So we are an association. So we're going to be talking about that network. I'm going to give you a high level of overview of IAAP, introduce you to the chapters, and then we're going to open up for some questions and answers. And hopefully that will help have an open discussion. How's that sound? Good? All right, let's go. All right. Colette has already kind of gave a really graceful introduction. I really appreciate it, Colette, of is this something that we need in Africa? And Irene highlighted that. So just to give you a little bit about G3ICT, which is the umbrella organization that IAAP is underneath, a global initiative for inclusive ICT, information communication technology. It started in 2006, and it started out of the first human rights treaty from the UN, the CRPD. So that spawned G3ICT to develop policy work, develop training to push the CRPD and the work that's being done. In 2016, IAAP fell underneath it and moved underneath the umbrella of G3ICT. So our mission is tied to the CRPD. Everything that we do is working towards those sustainable goals. And I think that's important to keep in mind. And that involves the certification and the professional education and the networking. Those are the three primary pillars of IAAP. We are a nonprofit, and our base is in Atlanta, but we are global, as I've already mentioned, with chapters throughout the globe. Our primary mission, other than those three pillars I just talked about, is to make sure that we are spreading the accessibility profession. And we do that through those three pillars. So that gives you a little bit kind of a high overview of IAAP. We have grown. We have grown fast. I've been in my role for 3 years, 4 years actually now, and came in 2019, then COVID hit, and that was interesting. Last year, we grew organizational members at 86% growth, and individual members at 36% growth. That's a lot of growth. And that we're not the only ones we're seeing in the disability community that's having that type of growth. We're just an example of that. So there's some synergy going on. Something's happening right now in regards to the accessibility profession, and we're pretty excited about it. We are in over 100 countries, so our members or our individual certification holders, you don't have to be a member to take a certification, make up an array of different sectors in the industry. I've listed a slew of those. I'll just read that just to make sure everyone knows. IT, government, education, we have telecommunication, we have healthcare, consulting, particularly around accessibility consulting, but others, financial, banking, assistive technology, disability services, and architect, engineers, travel, tourism, and transportation. That's a lot of sectors to serve, right? So it's important that we have members that tell us what the benefits they need. And it's important that we make sure that we are meeting those sectors' needs. And so we work real hard to do that. And as a small organization, a small nonprofit, that can be challenging. So we have to come up with the best approach not only for the sector and industry that we're working with, but the region that we're working with. And that could involve pricing of all services and benefits, depending on where you're at around the globe. It can involve translations of all exams, which is not an easy thing. Our certifications, which primarily is one of our largest benefits, right now have been translated into German, our CPAC, and our WAS. So we have a foundation certification that deals with what is disability, what are the solutions, what is universal design, what is assistive technology. It is broad in reach. Then we have technical certifications that are deeper, and that goes with people that have hands-on skills, not the knowledge, like the CPAC certification, but the technical aspects of that. So you need to come to the table having worked, for example, in web accessibility, in integrating HTML, understanding HTML and ARIA, understanding assistive technology and how that works together. So those are pieces. We also have an accessible document certification. In addition to that, we inherited and worked on from the Gates Foundation out of Canada, we have a built environment certification with 3 different levels. We've played around with other certifications, and from procurement to HR and other areas that we found our members are crying for support in. So we're working on that right now. We do professional education. We collaborate with universities to make sure that professional education is up to par. We also have a webinar archive and series every year. Some of the webinars are translated into UN languages, so we make sure that the transcripts are available in real time. So we have that, as well as we have a networking aspect that is on a platform that we host, that people can ask questions right away from subject matter experts or not. So that is some of the primary benefits that we offer. We have a newsletter that goes out monthly, and this is a curated newsletter of what's going on around the world in accessibility. It's free for anybody. You go to the website, you sign up. In addition to that, we have a weekly newsletter, and that provides individuals insight into what's going on with IWP around the globe. So it's more us, other than the curated list of other resources around. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an overview of our benefits. Our chapters, they're very diverse in what they do and where they're at. We have a chapter agreement that each chapter signs. We have a chapter lead that is the primary organization that makes up the chapter with an advisory council. So the advisory council, we try very hard to promote the fact that it needs to be very diverse in the sense of the sectors and the industry, right? Because we serve all of them pretty much. So we want academia, we want government, we want nonprofit, we want private industry involved in these chapter advisory committees. So you have a lead organization. That lead organization can be private, it can be a nonprofit. The monies that come into the chapter are based on membership, a percentage, and from certification, a percentage. And that goes to the lead organization to be distributed in the region. Now, it's critical that lead organization uses that money in a very specific way for the chapter. So usually we request that there's a foundation involved, that some sort of nonprofit involved, that money flows through to make sure that it's being handled appropriately and it's not being integrated into a private entity company, for example. So the chapter does have the focus is a lot on our code of conduct too. IWP serves the accessibility professions, as I mentioned, professionals. That means that we have all our members sign off on a code of conduct, and that code of conduct makes sure that you don't make false claims, which I think is very important. And there's a lot of companies out there sometimes that may promote their products and services a little bit more aggressively than probably they could. It also features the fact that we do not at all, IWP does not say your product's better than another product because you're a member. We highlight all members, individuals, and organizations on our website. We have a digital badge, individual digital badge, and the organizational digital badge. That is done by Credly, where there's metadata in that badge that allows us to control a member who may not be acting in good faith. Or if it's a certification holder that chose not to keep up those certification credits that you have to do every 3 years. We're able to turn that off. So it's critical that we have that control to make sure that we are being true to the rest of the accessibility professionals that we have out there. It's not an easy place to be, but it's an important place to be because we represent y'all in a sense. So I'm going to turn this back over to Colette, and we've got some questions up there. I know we have a Slido questions at the two. I'm not sure how that actually works, but we're going to glance over to the technical expertise over there in the corner, and we're going to go ahead and ask the audience and then ask through Slido a series of 5 questions. And if you've got a question right now that's not on the list that Colette will read, feel free to ask it. And Klaus, also, I know you're there, so if you have some input and thoughts around some of the challenges around running a chapter, we can get you a mic and go from there. All right.
Yeah. Can I just check, is there a Slido coming up from the tech team?
I did want to say that I didn't give you a list of the chapters that we have. So we have a chapter in Israel. You've seen Mikkel on stage a lot. She's real involved in that. That's tied to Access Israel. We have an Indian chapter through Barrier Break. We had a Nordic chapter through Funka Foundation. We have a UK chapter, which is AbilityNet. We have the Lantum chapter that is through Hair Colors. We have a DOC chapter through T-Systems. And we also have a UAE chapter through Cedra Foundation. So we are talking, in addition to that, to having a Spanish chapter. We've been talking pretty closely with ONCE. And we also have a Canada chapter that's in the works. And we have been talking to China about chapter.
We lost our Slido.
Oh, that's a Slido. So we're putting pressure on y'all then, because now you have to give us some answers.
But I think the guys online, if anyone's still with us there, can also just use the chat, please, because they'll send all the comments through. So to start off, I suppose one of the first questions would be, would you participate in getting an IAAP African chapter off the ground? So would anybody be interested in joining this, participating, contributing?
Do we have a mic that can be passed around the room? I don't even mind. Okay, that's all right. Any hands up or any thoughts around, any questions around that? Would y'all be interested? Maybe hands up if you would be interested, or you have 1, go 2. We got 3 over here. Thank you, over there in the corner.
Yeah.
4, 5, 6. So it looks like we've got a good group. All right. Okay, so that's great. I'm going to let Klaus talk just briefly about what it's like to run a chapter. Klaus, okay? That's okay, I got it.
I lost something, yeah.
It's all right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Klaus Höckner. I'm running the DACH chapter. To explain what DACH means is D for Deutschland, A for Austria, CH for Switzerland. That means DACH, yeah. And DACH is the German expression for a roof. Yeah? So we are on the roof. Yeah? Three countries under one roof. Yeah, we have the specific thing in the European Union that the Germans want to speak German and not English. So we had to translate all the things, and the translation process was a really complex process because we had to go to the database, we had to translate all the things together with native speakers, then we retranslated it, for example, retranslated it from German to English and compared the retranslated thing to the original thing, yeah, to make sure that all the things are really in line and also compliant to the WCAG, which are the underlying basis of all the things that we have. We see that the collaboration thing is one of the most important thing. You have to have the right organizations on board, and these organizations should be no sleeping partners. They should be active partners. The commitment is very important, because in the beginning you won't earn enough money to feed all the people that you are engaging in your organization. So you have at least 1 or 2 years to wait for for being successful, to have to break even. And the other thing is, I see certification as one point in an ecosystem, because certification alone is nice, yeah, but you have somebody who educates the persons, yeah, and you have somebody who also certifies the product. That means the website that's coming out, yeah. So when I'm a company and I have a website and I want to prove that my website is compliant to the rules, in this case, when I'm in Europe, to WCAG 2.1 AA, for example, then I'm looking for companies that have experienced staff with a certification. And then the end, when I have my product, my website, then I'm looking for a company which is certifying that the website that was built by this company is also compliant to the rules, and so I can prove, okay, they have done a good job. But how they get the knowledge, the people that are working in the let's say in all these agencies that are building up their websites, they have to go to universities, private organizations, whatever, and do their education, their training, and this training has to be reviewed every 1, 2, 3 years. 3 years. We'd say is one of the important things, that you have a relatively small period of reviewing. There's one sentence what was said by Irene. Most people come to us, or most companies come to us and say, okay, give me a checklist. Yeah? When you have this checklist, we are accessible. And they say, no. It's a process. It's a process. You have to train. Yeah? You have to train your staff. You have to train. You have to bring it. You have to bring it to the DNA of your company, that you want to be accessible. Yeah? And it does not have to be an additional thing. Yeah? Okay, accessibility is one more thing with corporate social responsibility or whatever. Yeah, it has to be in the company, in the DNA of the company, that they want to work with all these rules and regulations that we have. And one of the most important things is engage person with disabilities. They have to test. They have to build up the companies, the websites, and all the things around, because they can judge what's the best. Because when they are using the assistive technologies, then you see where the problems are. For example, when you build up a website. But certification, I think, is 75%. No, 75% not, but is a big portion of the success of an accessible website, accessible ICT, but you have to do it in a professional way.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Klaus. Just a couple of points, just to clarify some of what Klaus was saying, because there's some stuff in what he said that was pretty important. We are a volunteer organization. The time that the DOC chapter put in, the volunteers to translate the exams, was pretty impressive. The committees that we run are volunteers. We're made up, and why we are successful and why our numbers look so good right now is because of volunteers that are committed and passionate to ensure that inclusion and diversity is integrated into organizations and the community at large. So that is such an important piece of this. And each region, each chapter has their challenges around that, getting those volunteers in to help get the chapter off the ground. So the commitment needs to be strong with that. The other challenge for us, and this is a challenge that we continue to work on, and Irene and I have talked about this several times, is localization. So all certifications, and we do the best with all benefits, to be inclusive around the globe. We bring in subject matter experts, volunteers, that from different places around the globe to actually work on the certifications. We don't do it as a team. The volunteers do it, the professionals do it, and we use an outside vendor to actually make sure everything goes to scale. And we don't keep the database of exam. That's off-site with the professional testing group. We don't grade the exams. That's off-site. So again, it's important that when those exams, the certifications are, I need to stop saying exam, when those certifications are developed, that we include regional, localized, as much as we can, content around that, resources, and so on. That's a challenge. The world's a big place, right? So we refresh those certifications each time. And Klaus also hit on another point is we really, as IWP, we're not about training, even though we've had to become more of a training provider. We have approved providers, that we can look at their training and say it matches up, it is mapped to these certifications and to the domains within the certifications. We want those providers to come in and help train to those certifications. So that is an area that we also, work towards. The other, to be real transparent with y'all, the other thing that has been a little bit of a challenge is making sure that people with disabilities are integrated into every aspect of IWP. And that sometimes the accessibility professionals lose track of that, and they're out there doing their jobs. They're coding a website. We've got to make sure that people with disabilities are integrated in the life cycle of auditing that website, of testing that website. So that is on us, IWP, to make sure that we are pushing that. And you have to be in different regions within the globe. There's different cultural aspects to that. So you have to be aware of that. And that's why we, again, rely on the volunteers. So that, I'll pause for a second. Any questions with all that kind of laid out? It's a lot of stuff at the end of the day. I should have done wine. That's what I should have done. Okay, then let's shoot for our next question.
So while you're getting the questions up, Christopher, I just wanted to add that in the built environment certification, we are actually asked to present our methodologies in terms of engagement with people with disabilities when we do audit work and site inspections. So can't speak for the digital space, but in the built environments, definitely included as part of the requirements.
Yeah, that's a great point, Colette. Yeah.
Yes.
Perhaps you should also mention that we have to document accessibility specialists now, which is a very, very big part of digital accessibility. All the Word documents, the PDF documents, and all this stuff. Yeah. I think that's a really important part.
Yeah, Klaus, just to repeat what Klaus said, with our accessible document specialist, that is hands-on work that you're doing to ensure these documents are fully accessible. That could be a PDF, it could be a PowerPoint, it could be an Excel document, and that's tested with people with disabilities. And Colette's exactly right with the built environment. That's included in the portfolio that you provided. With web accessibility, you have to make sure that you are working with assistive technology. You're not just coding. The exam covers that. So that means that they are touching AT, which is touching people with disabilities. So that is very good points. Yeah, could we get the questions back on that last slide? We're making y'all work late. Look at this. Just the last PowerPoint slide. Thank you.
So what do the people in the audience and the people online, please use the chat. We do get those sent to us afterwards. So what could be some of the possible benefits of establishing an African chapter? So anything from systemic change, networking, spreading accessibility in terms of education or awareness, employing people with disabilities, or anything else that you can possibly think of.
Any thoughts from the audience? I can toss you this mic. There we go.
Sorry, okay.
I think it creates an opportunity for accessibility standards to be applied to local solutions, and it ends up having a local best practice, so that when we are talking about accessibility, we are no longer just taking examples from developed countries, but we are also thinking about how accessibility applies, like in the rural area, where maybe there's no concrete or the resources are not there to make a concrete footpath. What is the accessibility standard? What is the solution to put there? And how can we make it a standard that is applicable in Africa as well as other developing countries like in Asia or somewhere?
There is so much to unpack there. That was a lot, that statement, and I'll let Klaus jump in. It's feedback, yeah. Yeah, could you walk around the box? So you just hit the right spot with that comment. There's a lot that you said, and I'm so excited that you brought that up, because the whole concept of an association, right? And we're a young association. Keep in mind, we started in 2014. Our first certification launched in 2016, right? We jumped in with another certification in 2017. So we are really young. The certifications usually have a 5-year life cycle where we see how they kind of go. So we're just at the 5th year for our CPAC. But where you went with the best practices, piece of that is fascinating, because as an association, we should be collecting data on not only how our certification holders are going through their journey with accessibility, has that certification made a difference, but also best practices in the industry around standards, as you brought into it. So if we're doing our job right, we're collecting information that's going on in the regions that we can actually publish best practices around. And not only that, we can do professional education around that. And if we're doing our job correctly, we will see where those gaps are. And we will develop another certification or more professional education around that. So I really appreciate everything that you just said. And it's not talked about enough with guardian associations. And we've got ways to get there, but we are moving that direction. And it's lovely that we're talking about that here at the beginning of a possible chapter, that we can build that into the framework and the model to make that happen. So I appreciate your comment very much. Anybody else?
Yeah. So I'm Alexander Kojotete from Ghana. I think there's no argument that Africa needs a chapter, because our context is different from UK. But what does it take to have a chapter? What are the functions of a chapter? And as I listen to you, you kind of express some fear. And so I want you to share that fear with us, so that we can understand what we are asking for.
Right.
Exactly.
No, yeah, I mean, I've worked with several chapters now, and I appreciate the question. And there is a little bit of fear there because you want to make sure you, number one, pick the right organization that will run this, right? Number two, you want to make sure you have the right people at that table with that organization. And sometimes that's a slippery slope if you don't know that organization. You know what I mean? And you don't know that they are bringing in the right people to the table. We're not the experts. I mean, the country is the expert. So I think that those are two things that I'm always cautious about. With the DOC chapter, it was very clear that they had, to be real honest with you, when they came in with the lead T-Systems, which is the organization that leads that, I really wanted more Klaus's organization, which is a nonprofit, to possibly lead it. And I was battling with him about, who should be the best lead. But he was very clear that he knew his region, he knew the resources with this organization, and that's where that trust came in. So I think, when I hesitate, and there's a little fear in there, that's where that's coming from. Because if you've got the right organization, you've got the right people around that table, you're in a good place. You know what I mean? And we do monitor. We try to monitor the chapters. The DOC chapter, you don't have to monitor too much because they get everything done. But not all the other chapters are like that. So I hope that answers your question. We've only got a couple more minutes. Want to try one more question?
Yeah, I think we'd head off for the last one, which is around the organizations and the companies who should be invited to be part of the chapter's advisory council. I think this speaks directly to what we were just responding to Alex's question.
Yeah, so we don't know Africa in the sense. We have Irene here, which we would enable over the last couple of years. Just thoughts around, if we do move this direction, we'll obviously have another meeting, a virtual meeting after this, where people will be invited from the conference to attend, be a larger meeting. And then we will back away and let the community decide. But what partners out there, with disability organizations, what companies? So this is kind of just various, broad questions, and maybe you could just throw some names out, or we could wait till we have that meeting. Any thoughts on that? Oh, right here? Oh, thank you.
Hi, so my name is Man, and I work at IMPH in Djibouti. So we are the National Agency for Persons with Disabilities, and I think this is a great idea for us because we do have to impose on governmental decisions in terms of for persons with disabilities, and having websites accessible to persons with disabilities sort of raises their voice, amplifies their voice in decision making within politics. And I believe they are in the best position to make decisions for their own lives. So having access to documents, who are we to say that they should not? If they understand each document that's rolled out, then they know exactly what they should fight for. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, that's great. That's great to hear. I'm just glad you're here today. This is great. Definitely want to follow up. Yeah. Anybody else before we close? It doesn't have to be just this question, but anything.
Okay, in respect to the question, I'm Iram, Light for the World, and in respect to the question, for me, I think I would look at organizations with a regional presence, especially within the Western, Eastern, and Southern Africa, because what happens is there's usually, within the region, I think coming from Africa, we do see a disconnect where East Africa exists, Southern Africa, and Western Africa. So having organizations that do have a representation across would really be helpful, and the association is actually needed to bring in the lessons across, the cross-learning, because the realities across are very different. I think Colette would agree with that. The realities are very different, but having existence to share, but I'm not too sure how that would work, maybe having sort of sub-chapter, because we're too big, again, we're 52 countries, right? So thinking, is it sub-chapters to coexist and then share? I don't know, but it's something worth the thought. Yeah.
So, if I can just briefly respond to that, I think this is something we've been discussing with the IAAP for a while. it's complex, and but accessibility is so needed. So, and I think maybe we can discuss this further when we have like an online call, and we can have more participants after you've now thought about it a little bit more. Because so initially we were discussing with G3 ICT around, do we just start off with English-speaking countries? Because we don't have the certification and the body of knowledge in a lot of the African languages. If we can start there, maybe, potentially, that's one way of narrowing the scope from the beginning. And then once we have volumes, we can then split out into country chapters. But until that, we don't have the volumes of people coming through at the moment from the continent. So that was one of the aspects that we were thinking about taking this on.
Yeah, it's a good point. And we even played with ideas of an affiliate, where you have a main chapter, and then you have different affiliates around, and you build the affiliates. So in fact, that's even written into the most current chapter agreement, that if you've got a region within the area that really is doing a great job, can we somehow funnel some revenue to them eventually to support that? So I think that, as Colette said, I think that it is a complicated process, and it deserves a lot more time and thought around it. I think we've come to our end. I keep getting a dirty look over here.
Just as you are closing up.
Throw something at me.
Yeah, it's the time.
Yeah, maybe one comment
Thank
as
you
you.
all so much.
Just one comment as you close up. I'm just looking at question number 2, and then I tie up with question number 3. Looking at the benefits that we would want to achieve, which is quite many, and then just coming back to the organization that would want to maybe lead this particular initiative. I think all of us, because we are actually pushing the same mission or mandate in terms of just to be able to make our participants be independent. I think in terms of a start, if we can be able to have organizations in different countries, the Apex organization, so specifically if we talk about employers, then if we can be able to have the Apex organization in each country that deals with employers and consumers, be able to lead the initiative, just to be able to kickstart it. And then they can be able now to pass it to the subsequent secretariat or steering committee. Because it will be quite difficult to leave it open. We will never start. Apex organizations would be the good in terms of setting foundation, so that we just hit the ground, and then they can be able to decide who to be able to spearhead from a country perspective.
So if you've got a good council, not only of industry and sector, but regions, could also be a big benefit. So I appreciate that comment. We'll take that back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you. All right, y'all. That's it. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Colette.
From me, Teddy Otieno, the MC of the day, is goodbye, good evening, and good night.